too. If you don't ever want me to say info path in here, just slip us $100 and then we'll stop saying it.
That's great.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Great updates. All that is recorded, so you'll be able to find that on our YouTube channel if you missed it. So great stuff. All right, so not only do we give back to our community here and in our technology community, we also give back locally to our charities. And the board every year takes a look at different charities and adds it to our list. We rotate these on our monthly user group to be able to provide a way to donate to them. This month's event of donating $200 is to the Veterans Home Warriors Next Adventure. We've donated a couple times now, but this is really about helping veterans overcome PTSD through recreational, really cool adventures. So if you're interested, check out warriorsnextadventure.com. Great website. They've got really great videos on there about what their organization is about in order to help bring people together and find an outlet. So happy to do that. And now let's move to our next two topics. The first one, creative approval process with SharePoint Lists and Teams. We all need those, of course, especially around approving vacation. And then, of course, the crash course I'm so interested in. I want to go ahead and first turn it over to Joe, and then we'll turn it over to Corinne, and then, of course, come back together and do the survey and just talk and close out the session today. So that, are you all set, Joe?
I am.
Great.
Hopefully you can hear me well enough and you can see me. And by the way, Michelle, I enjoyed seeing your little spot on Care 11 there. It's interesting if
Thank
people
you so
haven't seen
much.
it. I think it was
Appreciate
a week or
that.
two ago. Yeah, it was pretty good.
That's
I was
pretty
like,
fun.
I know that.
All right, well, have fun and everyone enjoy yourselves. Turn it over to you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to share just a sandbox window here. Hopefully you can see that. So tell me if you, I guess I can't tell you if you, tell me if you can't see that right now. How's that? Okay, all looks good.
Looks great.
Looks good.
All right, so for starters, I just want to kind of give you here's what the environment looks like. And so I'm using a Windows sandbox. It started out in Windows 10, still Windows 11. Thank goodness. I really do like the functionality of the team because it's just you can test software all you want. And you can run, like, for instance, in my case, I'm doing my Windows 365, Microsoft 365 demo account through there. So it's my sandbox account. I've had it for years. I mean, there's, they tell you that they're going to actually decommission it every 90 days if you don't use it. I use mine all the time. So just to test stuff, because why test and break stuff on your production when you can test and break it on something that doesn't matter? You can just go back and reset it. So if you don't have a dev account for Microsoft 365, you should go get one because it doesn't cost you anything and you can build and break all you want. And then this is just being running in the sandbox. I didn't install any of the local Office apps on here. You could, it wasn't worth it because every time I got to restart my machine, I got to open the sandbox up again, then reinstart and reinstall that software because, again, every time you close the sandbox environment, it flushes it. So it's gone. So that's kind of what it is. And then what we're going to try to do is, and I had to pre-bake a lot of stuff. So, look at it, and we're going to look at all the pieces of it, but I have to pre-bake it because it will take way too much time to type in some of the things, especially some of the runtime variables that I've stuck in here. So you'll kind of see as we go, but then I'll also going to show just the end-to-end, what you might want to use. And, some of this stuff makes sense, some doesn't. I thought about doing a vacation request, but instead I did a CapEx request just because everyone's got to deal with that. And it kind of hit a couple spots that I wanted to make sure it hit, in that it hit multiple people outside of a team site that wouldn't necessarily have rights to the list, because I want that list sort of protected, and I want to have some summary and comments to kind of get captured in that list. And I didn't want all the rest of the users that are in the company to be able to actually go hit that list. So it performs a function for me to make sure it gets separated. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll have a little, just a little flow that we're going to show here in just a minute as well. And then I have it as a 2-level request. So the first level is going to be some people that would have to first pre-approve something. Think of it like department managers, et cetera. But then the final approval is going back out to the CFO, and then they would, give the final approval, and then it gets passed back to the person who made the request, and then they can go buy whatever happens to be in that CapEx request. So that's how it's kind of laid out. And as you have questions, post them in the chat. And I'm going to be on the whole meeting for the end. I don't want to run into cringe time. So if we get tight on time at the end, I'll try to answer stuff as we go. But on the other hand, it'll probably be easier just to answer things at the end as well too. And then you can also reach out separately. I'll answer questions too. Some of it may not be pertinent, but some might be. So anyway, that's that. So I'm going to kill that presentation because no one needs to see it anymore. So I'll take you out to the team site first. So the team site I kind of built was this finance team. And in the finance team, I have a CapEx shared channel for some of these people that aren't, and I'll just go off so you can see who's the members. I got things. So I got a couple people that are the owners of the site, and then I have a couple people that are outside that actually are members. And the actual list itself sits out at the level of the finance team. So if I open that up in SharePoint, you'd see the list, and I'll just go out there just get out to general, just so you can see that this is just a regular old site here. So we'll drill way out here, and because I'm doing this just in a in a sandbox environment, it acts just like, but I'm in all web tools. So, which is a little different for me because I have normally used the tools built into the Teams app, but that's okay. So here's the CapEx and CapEx approvers of the lists that are out at the root level of this finance team. That shared team doesn't have any access to it and won't see it. So the list itself looks like this, and you can also get it through your lists. And I just use the list app from that. And I have two components to this thing. One's going to be using a lookup to get the approvers on it, and one's going to be just the list itself. So if you click on the list here, it gets you to that same spot as your CapEx request list that you just saw there on the other screen. So this is the lists. You can actually download the lists app in this sandbox. I just had it on there, but then it did a Explorer update and it broke the thing. So I'm not going to show that app for those. So what I will say though is this just appeared last week, where Forms now is part of my dev tenants data. So now I can actually do forms through here. Well, of course I did forms in here, and I thought, I'm going to be really smart, and I'm going to go ahead and capture this data in a form right here, and then I can bypass the whole idea of using Microsoft Forms on the other side to grab the data, because I wanted it available to everyone that didn't necessarily have access to the list. Well, you can do that here. However, there's some limitations, and I'm just going to tell you about the limitations. It's new, for one, so grain of salt, right? It's going to work almost exactly the same. I put a form out here, and I thought, this is great, and I walked through all the pieces. It doesn't have the ability to add in an attached field. At least it didn't as of yesterday when I checked again. So if you had attachments as one of your items you want to capture from people, like for instance, they got a statement of work, or they've got a quote from a company as their CapEx, and you wanted to include it in here, I couldn't find a way for this form to grab it, which is why I was using the other form to begin with. But one thing I did find, and this was kind of a hard lesson I learned this morning, is I marked these required, and then in this form, because it's part of the list, attached to it list, it marked the actual data on the list as required as well, which then, if any of you have used any of the update SharePoint item, it requires those things to then be populated. So I'm like, okay, I've done it to myself now. So when I go in there, you're going to see that I'm going to have to, anything that I marked as required here, I'm going to have to add back in as an item to be pulled back, which is a little time consuming. But normally I would have said on a list, whatever the data I needed to capture from the other side, I put on the form, and then in the back-end database, if I'm just managing the database, I don't necessarily make them required on the database side. But anyway, so this is our list. So the title is going to be the kind of the project name, if you will. Someone's going to be requesting this. There's a department. That's the key element right there. The department's going to drive who has to do the approvals. And you'll see in just a minute how I'm trying to do this, so you can kind of see if something like this would work in your world as well. Expected date, business purpose, and budget. How long is it supposed to last you? What's the amount? I have a reference number that I create, and that's just an idea. So if some of you have ideas that you might want to use that as I have it built in one of the updates that it just puts CapEx dash a date number in there and then the line ID from whatever this line happens to be, only because then when it goes into the approvals, you're going to get a pile of these approvals. The more detail you give people in that approval list, the better off you're going to get for people paying attention to what the approval is that they're approving, because they're going to get approvals for all sorts of things as you're building more of these. I actually capture an approval summary and then approval comments in my list. And then the last piece is approval status. And that's what helps me trigger, because I've got 2 layers of the approval, whether the first time through, and then if it gets rejected, resubmitting it, and then the resubmitting it, I've got a trigger that says, if it's been modified, resubmitted as the status, I'm going to do this again. And what I'll say is, I'm going to go back to the team here. So in the team site itself, I have this idea that we want a flow chart with the group. So for those of you that are Visio users before they were owned by Microsoft, which raise my hand, that would be me. I love my Visio, no question about it. However, not everyone has a license for Visio. So this might be a next best thing for some folks. If you wanted to use it, just use the standard old whiteboard, and you can use some of the tools and shapes that you can put on there. I also just found out recently that there are actually some snap tos on these lines, which is like, how do you heck? That's great. So anyway, I built this approval process, and the idea is this. I'm sharing this with my shared CapEx team site, so people that are not necessarily just the people in my CapEx world, the people that are actually making the requests, I'm also including this rather than just the owners, because I wanted to have some area that says, here's what's going to happen, and have some input for them as well, if you wanted them to actually have input into the flow, if you will. So what we're saying is it can either come in through a form or it can come in through manual entry. The manual entry is going to be done by one of the owners because they're going to have access to the list in the back end. It's going to then go look up the department for approvers based on what they put in there, and then it's going to route it to level 1 approvers. If the result is approved, it's going to go to level 2. If it's rejected, it's going to go to the finance team manager, and then they're going to have to work it out with the person who made the request. And then at that point, it can either get resubmitted by that finance manager, and then it'll go back through the process again until it either goes through the level 2, and then again you get the approved or rejected, and it goes through that loop again. If it gets approved, it's going to get an email. It's going to send the requesting person and accounting the request form saying it's approved, and process is done. If it turns out that it keeps coming back to the finance manager and it's been rejected, that person can also just cancel it, and then that's the end of it as well, and there's no more approval at that point. So that's kind of how the idea is set up here. But my point is you might want to give this flow to the people who are using the approval so they kind of know what to expect, and have them have a voice in it a little bit as well if it's appropriate. So, but this is just standard whiteboard. This is part of your Microsoft 365 licensing. If you've got the license already, you may as well use some of the tools. So yes, I love Visio, and you put Visio on there, and you can put the Visio on there and have people comment on it, and that works too. But if you want them to have, more than just comments, consider whiteboard. Might be the way to go. All right, so I'm going to leave that up there for now. All right, so let's get into the actual automate itself. So what I was saying is I have a form then that just comes out of forms, and if you want to go back a level, it can just take you back to the forms at this point. Of course, it always runs just slightly slower when you're actually trying to do a demo on it, to the point where it's not even going to give me a load. That's not good. Okay. Well, that's not good. All right, well, then we'll go back a different way. So we're going to go back out here to my automate. And I have a form that's just a standard form that just pushes in the data from there. And I actually have to capture from that form because the form itself dumps into an Excel spreadsheet. And the form is pointing, it's a group form. So it's pointing to that same team site, and it's pointing to an Excel spreadsheet. But I don't really want to have that Excel spreadsheet be part of my approval process because, yeah, sure, everything's there and I can get to the attachments, but I can't push and pull and update as well as I can from a list, which is why I chose to have a list. So what I have instead is I've got a CapEx form to list, and that's just the workflow. So what it's going to do, and we'll just go ahead and edit this thing so you can see it. And this one's the pre-canned one. I'm saying we're not going to start this from the scratch. So what happens is it reads and checks if a form has been created or not. The one thing I'll say is a lot of times, in this case, it was exactly the same thing. The form itself was not available for me to pick from the standard, so I had to grab the form's ID. And I'm sure some of you out there have had the same problem, and I don't know why it is that way. It just is. So you just have to go into the form itself and see. Let's see if my form's finally loaded here. No, did not load yet. That's just awesome. So, and Donald, by the way, this is what the new admin thing looks like. I click this and it goes nowhere. So this is the new admin. It just got pushed to my dev tenant today. It wasn't there before. So let's see here. I'll go to forms. Let's see if we can just bring up forms that way. Oh, please. Okay, we're going to let that be then. So anyway, you'd grab the form ID from when you say share this form and it has it in there in the list. Just go grab the form ID and drop it in there as under customize. And then you have to go grab the responses from the form. And then at that point, I go and create the item in my SharePoint list. So I'm just grabbing the pieces off of that form. And these are all the pieces that were on the form. And I throw them into my SharePoint list, which is in my finance team under the CapEx name of that list is what it is. And then just drop in all the data. I put the approval status value as new because that's my trigger to say anytime it's new, it's going to go in there and it's going to start the approval. So what you do have to do is if you have attachments is you got to go grab those attachments. So first I'm checking the form to see if there were any attachments because you kind of have to do that first. And then this is the trick, and I didn't make this up. This I pulled off of, there was a Learn site on the Microsoft side, and there was someone that had this and said, here's what you got to do. And you just got to go create this sample JSON. And I know it sounds terrible because we're talking this is supposed to be low code, no code. Well, if you want the attachments out of a form and trying to throw them to a SharePoint list, this is what you're doing. And it's just going to grab this stuff right here. The only things I'm going to use out of here is the name, the link, and the ID, I believe, is all I'm going to pulling out of that over time. So it ends up looping through. Yes.
I just have my hand raised, just going back a little bit. To get to your form really easily, you can go to forms.office.com. And when you click on the form, the ID actually gets appended to the URL. And so that's where you can grab the ID really quickly. Just thought I'd share.
Good call. Yeah, so you can get it there, or you can get it in that in the shared spot, one of the two spots there to get it from. I wish you could just bring it up so I could show you, but it appears. I'm gonna try one more time because you may as well try one more time, right? Yeah. Thanks. You see, as it just tells you that we just gave you your new apps, but let's see if forms can pop there or not. Well, it's fine. I could paste it in here as the form itself because I know the idea of it, but it's not worth it. It's just a form. So anyway, so we go back to here and I'm just grabbing. So it's grabbing through the list of potentially more than one attachment. And on the form itself, you tell how many attachments you can make. I think I had mine set for 6 or something like that. Pick whatever number is the number for you. I think 10's the max. But then they attach the items to a list. It ends up being an array list, and then goes and dumps that into your contents for the SharePoint list. So that's how it kind of plays out for this piece. And it's not terribly important about this, especially since once that other form piece of the lists becomes fully live and active, and it has the idea that it can get the attachments, this right here is all pointless. You won't need this. I only did this because I wanted to have a form available to people that weren't part of the team site. And they didn't have to worry about permissions or anything like that. They won't see, they can't interact, but that's the idea. So let me just close out Copilot for right now. So anyway, that's the first part of it. So I didn't make any saves to it. So we're going to go back out of that, and we're going to go check the flows. So I did pre-can a little bit of my new CapEx item form, just because I don't want you guys watching me type all kinds of variable items in there. So we're going to go and edit this form. Or edit this workflow. So the workflow itself, it goes and grabs when an item is created. So I started it from scratch, and I just did a real quick add some pieces to it just because I wanted to get there. So when you pick it from scratch, you'd say, I want an item and I want to pick it from this team site, which is that, and I want to pick the list, which is my list right there. And I'll talk about the CapEx approvers in just a second, but basically you started out and said when a new item is created. So this thing's being shoved in there from my workflow. It says go grab it from a form and dump it into my SharePoint list. So it triggers that and says now a new item's going. And so the first thing I do with it, and now this is because I made these required accidentally and I didn't really want to do that, but it's the way it is. But this is the piece I want right here, that I created this reference number here. And this reference number is just a concatenation from a date. So I do CapEx, and then I format the date UTC now and year, month, date. And this part just comes in there. And then I just add in the ID at the end of it. So I did a dash ID. So it's gonna show CapEx dash and then the date kind of window for you. I only use that mostly because it's easier for people visually to track it and say the year, the month, the day, that's when that thing happened. And then this is ID, which is unique to the line item in my list. And it's just a reference ID. You can make up anything you want, but I just thought I'd mention that in case that was interesting to you. So that gets shoved in there. And then I also throw in my approval summary. This approval is initiated by the person that's requesting it. Now it's me every time right now because I'm requesting it. And I'm not logging in as somebody else as part of this demo. You could, I think I have 5 other people in my demo tenant. But that's what I want to do right off the bat. So I want to get this thing, and then if I wanted to change it to some other status, I could. So in this new area here, you could change your status right here and pick a different status value. You could say like in process. Because it's new, it makes sense to be new. I flip to in process potentially later on if you really need to. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the attachments that come off of that as well, so I can use those in the approval. So, and I know it sounds like I'm getting the attachments again, and I am, but I'm getting them now from the list. So we're going to go to that list again with the ID of this particular SharePoint list item that we're talking about. And we go and get the attachment content. Now this piece is where you start with, you'd say now in my list, I'm gonna go get the ID and the file identifier ID is what it wants. And it's gonna do that for every one that's in here. That's why it automatically starts at 4 each. I just started with get attachment, and then it just by default says, well, it could be more than one. And that's why it gives me the 4 each right away. And at that point, I just start with my variables that are gonna be kind of runtime variables, if you will. So I know what I want to use later on because I said I was going to send an email to people, right? So I'll go back to my whiteboard. I'm going to send an email and I'm going to send an approval. So those two things both have different requirements as to what I want to send them, but I want to capture approval comments and I want to capture approval summary. The summary by itself is a one thing. It's one field, one string item, even though it might seem like it's more than that. It's really just one. It puts it all together. However, the comments, if I have more than one approver, is going to come in as an array of comments. So I want to bring that in, and I just want to append it to my string. And I don't really need it to be fancy formatted. I just want it to come in, and then I can use both of those two things later on in an approval and in a response, like a final response to someone in an email. So it's all kind of collected in that space, which is why I kind of pre-baked those variables, because just to type in initialize them all, it's kind of silly to have you watch me do that. So approval comments, approval summary, level 1, level 2, because remember I said I got 2 levels of approval here that we're going to do. And then I'll show you kind of where that plays in. And then I have the variable for approval attachments, and then I'm going to do the approval attachments for just the approval and for the email because they're different. I found that out the hard way one time. So I'm like, okay, so now from now on, this is how I start almost every one of my workflows. It's going to be an approval of a long list of things. So that's sort of how we started out. And then I grab the attachments, append them to the array, and then at the end of this thing, I have got myself what I want to get started. So now I'm going to go back, and I know I hate to jump back and forth in this, but I need to go back to talk about these lists. So this particular list right here is where all of the main data is going to be sitting. I do have another list that I have as looking up off of the department, because I want the department to drive who's going to be the approvers. And my maintenance group, if they were to put a department of maintenance, is going to go level 1 approver is going to be Xander, and Bob's going to be the level 2. This is a person that works in that department. This is the person that's the CFO. On the IT ones, I just want to do it because I'm going to go as me today, and I'll approve for level 1 and level 2 just for this purpose of testing today, so you can kind of see level 1 and level 2 go through. Like if someone picked operations, it would go to Nick, who's a project manager in the operations side, and then it goes to the CFO again. So the idea here, though, is, and this is, I've used this before in my life, so is you could have multiple approvers just by putting a semicolon in between and just adding another person in that list. So if I go and edit this list, for instance, if I say maintenance is going to be Xander, and for level 1, it's going to be Xander and my domain for this is Joe's1 sandbox on Microsoft.com. I didn't go crazy and buy my own domain for my dev environment. So if I do that, this is now going to go to 2 different people on the level 1 approval, and then it will roll through both of those 2 people in the approval. And then the final approval, level 2, will go here. The nice thing about doing this is, let's just say CFO has to be on vacation for 2 weeks. You want someone else to fill in. Any existing or in-process approvals are still going to have to go through that person. They could then reassign. That's one choice. Or if you said, okay, I know they're going to be going on vacation, anything that's going to be new after this point, I'm just going to change this value temporarily, and I'll change it back later, because it's going to go look this up each time a new CapEx request comes in. And that gives me the ability then to be somewhat flexible in terms of who's got it. Now, yes, again, they can reassign it to someone else while they're gone. But if you want them to have a true vacation, try to reassign it here. If you build this out correctly, then you can control who's supposed to be the approvals. Again, while we lock this down to the people that are in the finance team owners, so someone else doesn't have a chance to change who's the approvers, right? Okay, so let's see here. See if my forms finally came up here. It did not. That's horrible. Okay, we're gonna do it the other way then. So anyway, we need to get it started then. So then back to my approval. So I'm now into the attachments. So I've got those attachments covered, and I'm going to grab the approvers from that other list. So this is the part where it gets a little bit interesting, if you ask me. So I initialize 2 variables that are going to be string variables. And to get approvers, I'm going to go out here to get items and the finance team. And this time I'm going to go look up the CapEx approvers. The thing you're looking for is title, which that's the field that I've got. I'm looking up the title, and I'm looking it up from, this is actually the requesting department value from up above in my list. So that's how I can match it up. So you'd be tempted to say, I wanted to do a choice field from a lookup table. If you do it that way, you aren't going to be able to have this thing look it up, because it's going to look up a number that's associated with that instead of the label. And I know all programmers right now are cringing and saying, what is he doing looking up a string variable? You shouldn't, but in this case, my departments are very finite, and I need to keep them to match. And it's really majorly based on, you need to have it visually appealing to the users. So it's not that big of a lookup. So, and it's only one time. So we're going to look up the title, and what it's going to end up doing is it's going to end up pulling that title, and then the 2 values that come with it, as you saw in that table, was level 1 approvers, level 2 approvers. That's what it's going to pull out of that. And I'm going to use those, and I'm going to match those up in my list here. As I've said here, I want these 2 values set up here. So I've got them, and we're there. My level 1 approvers, level 2 approvers. So I'll go and get them, and then we're going to go start this thing now. So we're appending the string values. So this is now just pulling it in. So let's just go look here. As you try to pull one of these open, you'd say, I want level 1 approvers, which is the runtime I've did for level 1 approvers. And I just pulled a value from this get items. And for level 2, and I'll just do it again here. So you can see when I look at this, here's my get items and the things it's going to pull: level 1 approver, level 2 approver. And that's all I'm looking to grab in that. And because it thinks it's going to have more than one potentially, that's why it does it for each, which is okay, because we could have more than one in there. And now we get down to the real crux of the matter is we're going to go ahead and do ourselves an approval. So now we're going live. So we're going to do an approval. And this is my level 1. So we're going to create an approval. So we're going to start and wait. And the approval type, everyone has to approve. So in this case, that's what I needed. So when we get to this point, create a title. So in this case, I'm going to do CapEx. And I'm going to grab that reference value that I pulled. So I'm going to go down here. So they go in order, as if you haven't used lists anyway. So an item's created. I want, and it's not showing right there, but if you click on see more, I have that field. It's called reference number. And actually, I didn't do it on creation. I did it on update. Sorry. I did it on update. So let me go back here. I want reference value, reference number here. And the title of this, which was created at the beginning. So we're going to go back to the beginning, and the title is the project name. So CapEx, and the reference number that I kind of built that based on a date. And then the title is there. So we're going to assign this to the first level approvers. So level 1 approvers, which we've created a variable for that. In the details, think of this as like the email portion of it. So you go, let's see, I'm going to go project name. So this is going to show in the actual approval. So project name is kind of the title that we're going to go with. And title is items created. Okay. And just keep on working this down if you want. And what's showing in this details section is what's going to show in the details of the approval. So let's just go with business purpose. We're not going to put everything in here, but because we're not going to get done with this otherwise. And what the person's going to need to see the basics, right? So let's get this, at least the basics out here. Business purpose, we're going to probably want some dollar amounts in there. And let's do that. So the dollar amount's not going to show because I don't think I saw it in there. So we're going to say show more. And there it is, the amount. And right now there's nothing else to be told in this first level approval. I'm not going to add an item link because the first level approval people might not have a link to be able to get me back to that because that person may not have access to that list. So that would be a break. They wouldn't be able to see it. However, I can present them with the attachments. And I'm going to put the requester out here too because I want them to see that. So when we do that, so the requester is going to be the person that actually made this request. And I'm going to go put that in here because it's from the original item, requesting person, and it's an email address in my case, and that's what this is going to be. So here's the attachments. Right now, it's trying to say add a new item. That's not what I want to do. I have it in here as a variable already. So it's the array value of approval attachments. So now what I've done, I'm going to go ahead and save this once I do this because you should. Autosave is not part of this. So for those of us that are so used to the autosave in Teams and OneDrive, I love the feature, but it does not exist here. So we're going to go ahead and create an item right now just to see what's going to happen to get it to the first level approval before we go and do anything else. Now you can do the test right here and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to tell you you need to go back and do it yourself, basically. So we're going to go ahead and add a new item because my form appears to be broken still. So let's go. 15. Date. That we want this thing finished. Business purpose. We are going to buy a new server. In budget, yeah, it is. We're going to say 6 years and $12,000. this is where it would grab this in my form, who's the requesting person. So I'm going to have to be somewhat, I hope that's what my actual username is, but normally I'll be able to pick this, but Joe's One Sandbox. Okay, this is the driving factor right here. So I want to make sure I pick IT so I can see it go through, and the reference number is going to get created for me. So we're going to go ahead. Those values don't show in my form typically because those are created in the Microsoft forms that I have over there. So we'll give it a moment here, but what's going to happen is once it gets created, that trigger is going to happen that it says, okay, this is a new item in my list, and then it's going to throw a reference ID in there, and the approval is going to start. So let's go see if my approval is here yet. I don't see it yet. That's a previous one I did, so we don't look at that. Let's see how my list is doing here. So it threw the new in there, that's okay. So let's see if it's got a reference number yet. Not yet. Let's go. We will take a look and see how it's doing. Okay, so it's running. So if we want to see how it's doing in the run, so it's down the ways a little ways. So let's just see if it made any headway here. So here's where it says get the items for the approvals if you want to see how that looks. So because this was IT, the first level approver was going to be me, which we knew that was going to be the case. And second level approver is, in this case, me again. Normally, I would say that's going to be the CFO, which in this case is Bob Falk. So that's working through. And it looks like the approval's out there on its way for me. It should come to me either via email or through Teams. And it's out there as an activity saying, okay, it's ready to be out there. So we put some detail in there about this. We just put project name, test project 15, business purpose, new server, $1,200. So that's what it gave me. I didn't throw any attachments on there, so it didn't have any attachments. So we'll do the next one. We'll do with an attachment. It would have been nicer to have the attachments in the form, which I wanted to show you, but hey, do with what we can do. And so I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And then it's going to stop because that's all we've got right now. And so then it'll just give me the approval, and it's done. Okay, so the process is done. So if we looked at the run history, now it shows that it finished all the way through. Green is always good in that case, right? So we're going to go back and edit this now. The next time we do it, we'll have an attachment on there so you can kind of see the attachments go. All right, so now we got to do something about this. If it passes or fails, what we're going to do with it. We know we're supposed to do a second level of approvals, which is why I captured some of this data. But we're going to go ahead now and say, we want to add to this thing my next step. Come on, give me my, all right, interesting. Very strange. It's not giving me the ability to add to it right now, which is kind of annoying. All right, let's go back out of my flow and go back in. Come on. There we go. All right. Happy days. So we're going to get down to the end of this thing, and we're going to add to this because we want to have a conditional now. So we have to do something with it. So we're going to say, I want to add a conditional control for this. That's going to say, if my outcome from this level 1. So I really should rename that level 1. I didn't have a level 1 in there, so let's go ahead and do that too. But what I want to do is say, I'm going to pick just does not contain reject for right now. The argument there could be, you really want to have and approve too? You could, and I typically do. I have both in there, but in this particular case, I'm only going to give them one shot at it. So as any good developer should do, level 1 condition. All right, so let's go back to this and rename it because I don't like the fact that it doesn't have a level 1 in there. Okay, so all we're going to do with this thing at this point is I want to go ahead and add another action to it for when this happens. So I want to actually grab that variable from the string above. So I want to grab the summary and the comments. So what I'm going to do is first, I'll just grab the summary because I know that's going to be a single. So approval summary level 1. Okay. So right now the value is going to be from that response summary. And so level 1. Okay, so we grab that. And then I'm also going to have it grab the comments, which we expect because there's a comment for each potential person to respond. I'm going to get an array, so it's going to get a for each for me. So we're going to go to, and again, so we're going to append our string variable, and this time it's going to be comments, level 1, and when I put the value in here, it's going to pop it out into a for each. So level 1, comments, where are you? Do I not have, where are they? Oh, show more. Response comments, there they are. So when I pick the response comments, but you can see it just dumped it out into a for each. So I'm going to go here with level 1 comments and for each level 1 comment, just so we've got it labeled. So we know what it is. If it breaks, we know where to go look because it's going to give you a, hey, it's broken. Okay, so once it does that, it's going to go get the summary, get the comments, and now I'm going to start another approval because I want level 2 to start going after this. So we're going to do an approval again, and we'll go off to the false side afterwards, but for right now, that's not what I want. Sorry, let's delete that. I want, yeah. I didn't want text. So in this case, we're going to do a everyone must approve. In this case, most often it's going to be the same, but anyway, you could have 2 people. Right now we're only going to have 1, CapEx, and I'm going to go grab that value again. So update item from here, reference number, and we're going to grab then the original value from when the item was created, title. This time, we're going to take it to the level 2 approvers, and the details could be the same. We could have copied those and pasted them, but you know. Name. I want business purpose. I'm going to grab the expected date, the CapEx amount, and I'm going to do a little more than this. I want to have the level 1. I want the comments from the person ahead of me, and I'd like the summary at this to be given to this group as well. Because it's not bad for this person that's the second level person to go get that. Now, this person we know has access to the actual link. So we're going to go ahead and give them a link to the items if they wanted to see it. They may not want to see it, but we're going to give them the link to the item anyway, because we know that they have access. If you don't know if they have access, then don't do this because it'll break and then they won't be very happy with it. So let's go drop some things in. So let's get the project name, which is just the title, and business purpose. Let's give another behind, expected date. This expected date is probably more important for this last level approver, just because that might give them a handle on when they should make sure this gets approved by, if they're just kind of looking at it and passing it off for right now. So I'm going to see more because the amount was not listed in my main. And now I'm going to go back to here and say, I want to see my comments to this point. So approval comments level 1. Okay, and then approval summary level 1. So I'm giving this information. Now this is going to show up in the approval for the level 2 person. We do want to also give them attachments just in case we don't want to make them go into the item and then go grab the attachments. We can actually get the attachments available to them out here. So actually I'm going to do a show all again. The requester again, I'm going to pull from the original. So requesting person, and then where are we? Add in the items. So the attachments again, if I switch it to the array, which is what I want, I have an array of approval attachments out there. So this time we're going to go ahead and save it, and then we're going to go create another item in our list, and we're at 116. Okay, 130 is my cut time, right? Okay, done. Okay, done saving. So we're going to go back out one level because we want to get a watch on this thing in a minute. And do I dare even look at forms to see if they're alive? How about that? Let's go look one time quick. Not happening. That's just crazy. Okay, fine. So we're going to create a new item. This time we're going to attach some files to it. So, I mean, I could actually just use the forms in here and see what the heck. What can go really wrong in a demo, right? So that's not what I want. I want to actually send the form, preview it. So let me do it. Okay. Project. Test 16. Expected completion date. Give them some time, business purpose. Oh, this is going to be for our new server OS. In budget, yes, it was this time. 6 years of service, and this one's going to be $19,000. More expensive than the server. Oh, that's right, I can't do attachments here. This is why I'd love to have the attachments available. I'm going to kill it because, all right, we're just going to do it the hard way. Yes, doesn't really matter. 6 years. IT and approval summary. No. I want attachments here. So I did grab a couple attachments. These other two, they won't show you again, remember? So go ahead, add attachments. Come on. Oh, this is just a disaster for us here today. Okay, fine. I'll see if I can get the attachments added here before it gets done with its approval process. Goodness gracious. Okay. This has nothing to do with the actual workflow itself. This is something going on with my forms and my tenant, I guess. I don't know. I have the attachments. I know I have them available. All right. Well, we aren't going to show you the attachments today, so that's just the way it's going to be. So let's go look at this thing and see how it's doing. It should go through 2 sets of approvals. Let me take a moment. I will say this is normally the dev tenants are really super fast just because you got nothing else in them. But as always in a live demo, it's never going to be as fast as you'd like. Okay, so now it's in the running state. So let's see where it's at. Okay, so it's already pushed all the way down to level 1. So it's going to be waiting for me. Now I could go to my email and see if it's in there, which I'll look there just so you can kind of see what email looks like. All right, so this looks like could be the one. No, that's 15. That's not the right one yet. So it hasn't got the email yet. Let's just go up here. So there it is. This is 16, which is the one I just did. So test 16, project 16, server OS, $1,900. I would have seen the attachments here, but they're not here. So let's approve it. And I'm going to get the second level approval, even though normally that would be the case. But now you see this. Now it comes through, sent as another request. So this is now my second level approval. If you have the same person that's doing those approvals, you might want to put a second level in there. But as you can see, this one had the level 1 comments, which I didn't put any comments, and I should have. But it picks up then the rest of the approval summary so that the person who's doing that second level approval gets a good look at it and says, okay, that's the person that did it. They approved it. They did it then. Okay, it's fine. If there's any attachments, I would have seen them. The only attachment this is getting right now is just the link, which I gave you. But then I have the ability then to approve or reject at this point. So, you know, we're at 121. So we're getting it pretty close here. So things you'll want to look at, though, is check your approvals. There is a 30-day timeline on that from the Microsoft side, and I haven't found a great way of extending that, and I hope that maybe someone on this call has got around that a little bit. But you should teach people to look at their approvals, and if they put something through, don't let it wait 30 days. You can either maybe make a report to people to give them an answer of, hey, you should check this stuff. But you know, that's showing there the ones I've sent and the ones I've received. So the ones you've sent are the ones that you want to make sure are being handled going through it. So that's, you know, the most of it. What I'll say is that this one right here, for whatever reason, if I needed to now run this back through there, because now I have 2 approval processes, I didn't build in anything that says turn this thing off. So if I go back to my approval, and I'm going to edit this thing now because see if it in this edit mode gives me the ability to edit. I probably want to update something to tell it. Oh yes, it's not giving my. That is just really crazy. All right, we're going to go out of it and come back in, and we're going to edit and see if it gives me the proper setup here. So after I'm all done, oh, of course not. It's still not there. There we go. Okay. So after we're all done with getting the approval, we should probably do something to that list so it captures all that stuff. So while this is all well and fine here, I should then again have a change. And this is not approval 1, this is approval 2, but so yeah, it didn't you know, put my label in there correctly. So let's just get that in there real quick. Level 2. So after it's done, I need to do something with it. So if it went and they said, okay, we've approved that, I do want to do another conditional and say a level 2 approval has happened. So here's my level 2 approval. I want the outcome. And again, I'll do does not contain reject. And I want it to do something with that. So from that point, I want it to check and update my list. Update an item. So the item I want to update was the original item I just worked on. So it's in that finance team, and the list name was CapEx, and the ID from it was the original ID. Now, because I made those required, that's why they're asking me for this again. I wouldn't normally be doing this. I normally don't do it that way because I use a form in the front, because now I got to go tell it each one of these things each time, which is kind of stupid. I get why they're requiring you to put it back in here again, but it's not something you would normally do. So item created, estimated years in service. Let's just do it. So we get it through here. Oh, that's wrong. Sorry, I did that right. Estimated years in service. I gotta try that again. So. Get rid of that one. And the amount. I wish this would let you leave those things open, or maybe take the ones that are the most commonly used by you. I don't know. So what I want to do though is I want to change this from new to approved, because it's gone all the way through the approval process. I don't really want it to be stopping anywhere. What else do I have for options? Well, I do want to do something with these, and I want to update my list with the approval summary comments that I've got. So when I do that, it then gives me this. And so what you want to do is go capture them from, and I want to grab the stuff that was already in the list to begin with. So I'm going to take from here, because I pre-populated some of it, and I'm in summary right now. So I want to grab a summary, and then I want to do with that, I want to go grab my 2 variables that come with my level 1 summary and my level 2 summary. And I'll do the same thing with my comments. So I'll go grab them from the original list, because I kind of want to keep all this stuff in there. And I'm going to grab the ones that have been in my runtime that I've been grabbing from my approvals. So approval comments level 1, and just as a separator, approval comments level 2. That is what I want from that. And so actually I should change this, because you should document your stuff the right way. Update. Approval. So it's been approved. We are down to 3 minutes left. So what I want to do is I want to just take a moment to say, what if I did a resubmit, and what would it do? You can fill out the false side. I would add from here the email, because that's what I had in my whiteboard. I had an email in here, so you could do the send email. This is just a standard email, and I'll just start it, and then I won't necessarily finish it. Send email v2, and this is where you'd fill in all the stuff. You're going to say who's going to the original requester, and then you could put the body of the email and all the stuff you need to put in there. And then I then throw in the attachments then by just going in here and saying add in, from, because I actually have that, and add the attachments there as well. And again, the attachments is flip it to this, and this time we're going to grab the email attachments, because I had it to do it differently. The content has to be content bytes instead of just the way it is. And so that's, yeah, this is going to bark at me because I won't have all that piece in there, but let's just delete that for now. I wanted to show the other piece of that though, and let's save what we've got, because I want to make sure we don't run into Corinne's time. Come on, save. Well, that's doing that. So I have this functionality here that in the actual item, if you put in there the status of, I have a resubmitted status. I do want to show this piece, because if I pick one as resubmitted, it's going to run it down that path of, it's going to go through the approval process. And I'm just going to walk over to that flow real quick. I have that flow all built, so we're not going to build that one, obviously. So we're going to go to that flow, and I pre-built that one, resubmitted. Basically, a copy of this right here, but there's a little more to it. So I'm going to edit it just so you can kind of see it. It's going to be in the running state pretty soon here if it isn't already. So what you have to do though is, here's what you have to start with your initial triggers when an item is modified. So if you look at it modified, and then I pick the same item, and that's what it is. So the settings is the key piece, and then we'll wrap this up here real quick. The settings has to be a trigger, and the trigger has to match the approval status value of resubmitted, and that has to be spelled exactly the same way as you have it in your drop-down choice, because that's what it's looking for. And so then it walks through the exact same process that we just got done. Updates the item, goes and grabs who's going to be the approver, and it goes all the way through the process. And as you can see, and then I'm going to stop this is it then sent me another request for this one that I had done before, which is this 15 as a resubmitted approval. And then you would walk that through the same process as you did on the other side. So we covered a lot there. So I am going to relinquish my screen and send it to Corinne.
All right, great job, Joe, all around. That was amazing. And it's right, that terminology is so case sensitive. So you have to make sure whatever you're putting in your, your choice field to be spelled correctly. I think there might be some questions. Do you have maybe one more minute and then we'll turn it over, Corinne?
I have many minutes. I'm going to stay here for the entire thing as well. So if it makes more sense also to ask some questions near the end, I'm good for that too.
All right.
Fire away. Any questions?
Yeah. Unless people are raising their hand when they meant to clap, which that happens to me. So, but if there's any questions, go ahead. You can come off mute.
Either they're really bored to death and that there's no questions and everyone's asleep on the line, or it was really that well done.
Thank you. I think you blew them away.
Did I?
So
I apologize if that's the case.
No, it was really great, Joe. I think if there's any questions, throw them in the chat. We'll just keep on continuing on for time's sake purposes. Again, Joe, thank you so much. That was really great stuff. And we haven't had a great overview of an approval list using Power Automate and showing all the different capabilities and variables and so forth. So thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Corinne. Are you all set?